It's your professionalism that I respect.
Good morning. Why, Stephanie, why are you cracking up?
Oh, I'm sorry. I don't know. Having a good day.
I'm laughing at you laughing at the new intro with the professionalism quote dropped in the clip, dropped into the intro, and how funny it is that you find it funny every time we do the intro.
Didn't you see him beatboxing though?
No, I wasn't beatboxing. I was slurping when Chris was taking a sip of his coffee.
Why are we all 12? When will we ever grow up?
That is a terrific question.
You know, I had some, I wanted to talk about really quick, the best entrepreneurial advice I ever got. And it was to go train as a locksmith. And truthfully, it opened a lot of doors for me.
It's very funny, Anthony, because
I can't.
It's a little creepy, right? It's a little creepy.
I've been really considering a new career field. I've been thinking about starting an e-commerce store that just sells Velcro products, because every Velcro product out there right now, it's just a ripoff.
Do you know where rainbows go when they're bad?
Oh, where do rainbows go when they're bad?
Where do rainbows go when they're bad? I want to. Go ahead.
They go to Prism to reflect on what they've done.
Go to Prism. Go to Prism.
Okay. Got that all over.
It was right there for us, Chris. It was right there.
Oh, that was really good.
Oh my!
I feel like dad jokes are therapeutic. You know,
we went from 100 watchers to 0 on those 3 dad jokes.
Yeah, exactly. It's great.
Sorry,
Thank
guys.
you. Sorry, everyone. I think we'd just like to go ahead and, we haven't done this in a while, just collectively apologize for our sense of humor.
At least we don't have guests anymore to apologize to.
Yeah, it's a really good point.
The asset that's actually going to come out of this show is a book of dad jokes.
Why did you guys do a podcast? Well, we wanted to write a book.
We wanted to write a book.
Yeah.
Talk about the ultimate pivot.
Yeah, right.
Oh man. I think that maybe the topic today is dad jokes. Actually, no, today's topic, what if the rival winning your deals isn't even in your category? Yin Wu built Pulley because early founders weren't choosing between cap table tools. They were choosing between tools or their lawyers' spreadsheets. The real competition wasn't even software. It was a services alternative. Today on How to Founder, we're going to be talking about competitive analysis, why the rival winning your deals usually isn't even isn't in your category. It's still early for me, even though I'm on the East Coast, so it shouldn't be that early. And what real competitive intelligence looks like. I am your host, Chris Franks. With me, the lovely Stephanie Hayes, the even lovelier Anthony Franco. Good to see you guys this morning.
Did we say that?
No, I wouldn't necessarily.
I'll take it.
All right, so let's dive into the topic. Competitive analysis. First question, as you're considering a new venture, a new idea that you're thinking through, how much do the competitors and how strong those competitors weigh into your decision about entering into a project? Start with Anthony.
Well, I'm building. I was just telling you guys before we came on. I'm building a product that competes with Claude Code. So you tell me how much I really contemplated competition. I'm probably an idiot. But yeah,
I'm just going to go ahead and write that down. So
Anthony's. I have a unique ability to misunderstand the most simplest things.
The most simplest.
Yes.
So, Anthony, maybe not yourself, but what advice would you give to somebody in considering the competition landscape before you entered into business?
So you have to, competition kind of defines the space. I don't know if it's always, I think competition is good. I don't know if it's good to enter a space that doesn't have any competition. That might tell you something about the market. Right? Well, yeah,
it is funny because I think in this world there is competition analysis oftentimes comes like you don't even know what vertical or what industry you're in when you're starting. You just start with this idea, this problem you want solved, and suddenly you find yourself in an industry. I mean, I think we've had friends that are kind of didn't even know they were doing a particular solution or product, and then they ended up being an industry leader within that space. Stephanie, what about you? What do you think about as far as competitive analysis goes?
I would say that if there are competitors already in your space, I would say that they're a source of really good information, right? And my personal opinion is that competition doesn't really matter that much. It's more like how can you execute and how do you message, right? Those are the two things that are going to either help you find your little piece of that market or, compete. So I think there's really good information in what other competitors are doing and what they're investing in. But I also think you have to balance that out with what you see as the hole and the gap in the market, and focus your messaging, focus your investment on what it is that you want to do better, right?
I think it's funny because let's take the counterpoint for a second, which is there are founders that I know that got wildly obsessed with competitors.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the moment that you do that as a founder, I think it's potentially dangerous. Why, Anthony?
I have a story around this. So when I was running Effective, we had a competitor that we never really thought of. And we started way later than them. They were way bigger when we started, and then we just passed them really fast. And I was at a conference with and met the CEO of that competitor, and I was standing there with one of our best developers, Sean. Sean's a great guy. Anyway, we were the CEO of this competitor basically said, "Hey, Sean, you and I should get in a ring, in one of those punching bout rings with big puffy boxing gloves and hit each other." And Sean's the most affable, nicest guy ever. And he was like, "Yeah, okay, that's kind of fine. But I don't know, why would we want to do that?" And he said, "Because I just want to punch you in the face." and so it clued me in that maybe some people think of competition differently than I do. And that company was obsessed with competing with us. And I don't, first of all, I don't know if that's a healthy way to approach your market. It's I don't want to serve my customers. I want to beat those people. And that mindset can very quickly turn your company into mission driven to competitive, which I don't see how that's a winning strategy.
Stephanie, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, so in one of my businesses, my best referral partner is my number one competitor. Like we literally have the same audience, and we have lots of people who are members of both of our communities. And she happens to live like an hour away from me for some weird reason, but I just don't worry about competition. Like I use it as information. But I think what we're kind of getting at in this episode is that there are your direct competitors that are obvious. And then when you think about what if you've ever done a customer journey exercise or an empathy map, sometimes what people consider to be competition for you is a fully other option. Like one of their options could be, I'm not going to come up with a really good example here, but like I'm selling Stanley cups or like water cups. just because I have one on my desk and that's the first thing I saw. But they may not be considering other water cups. They may be considering whether they have bottles, right? Like, so, or their alternative is to get a water machine, right? So like, it's not apples to apples, but they're also considering what different things they can do, right? So I think you have to look at competition as, or your competitors as, not just the like product, but the also what a buyer may consider to be an alternative. And those are also competitive. And then there's a story of like pivots, right? I was just talking to my partner last night about a friend of his who started up a brewery, right? Like, they wanted to make craft beer, right? Middle-aged, crisis, go start a brewery. And his business is now worth 30 million, and he makes software for breweries, right? So he came from a software development background, and he just saw the opportunity when he was building his brewery to create this operations software specifically for that business model. And now it's worth 30 million. So you don't know where you're going to end up looking for competition. And instead of trying to see who's competing with me and who do I need to beat, just use it as data points, right?
I think that's a very good sort of next place to go, because I think that this is the component of, it's the advice that I got, single, I don't want to say best piece of advice, because he personally has given me a ton of good advice, but the Perry Evans advice that I'll never forget, Anthony, which is never start a company where only a single vertical or market set of companies can buy you. You want to be between multiple verticals, all of which are interesting with that. So you want to be the company that bridges and sits between all these interesting verticals. It was wildly meaningful at the time, because I had started a company that literally only one person would ever want to buy, and we had built effectively the same product. And I was kind of crying when he told me that story. But it's, as you're analyzing, even just starting out, as you're starting to map the landscape around you, I think that the piece here is, and really kind of the punchline of this episode is, the story is not about direct competitors. It's about where you fit in this overall landscape of the problem you're trying to solve, I think. And so how do you guys think about that? How do you start to look at adjacent industries? How do you look at, in the case of the example that we gave in the opening, it was a software product. His competitors weren't software products. They were lawyers. They were the services the lawyers were providing. How do you start to map that out, and how does that weigh into your decision about what product or service you're going to build it?
Well, I don't know if I necessarily agree with the fact that it's not focusing on your direct competitors. I think I'm gonna pull on that, and then Chris, I don't want to get to what you're talking about, but I think there is valuable insights to be had by looking at your direct competitors. I'll give you a couple of examples. If you go look at their negative reviews, it's going to give you insight on what not to do or how to position against them when you come up against them. If you go look at their SEO strategy, if they have one, it's going to tell you what keywords they're buying or keywords they're focusing on. So you can learn from your competitors based on how they're doing and how they're seeing wins in order to improve your company in one way or another, either services or marketing or sales. I think that's valuable enough to talk about. It shouldn't be your entire focus, but I do think it's valuable enough to talk about. Steph, what do you think?
Like, I'm an innovator by heart. I'm always looking at how I could do something different and better and what have you. So when I got a client right now who's invested a bunch of money in trying to build a piece of software, and I'm not sure she was totally clear on, like, I know the problem that she wanted to solve, but she wasn't totally clear on the landscape. And now that we are, taking it over and trying to launch it at some point, I start looking at the landscape and I'm like, okay, so this one does this, and this one does this, and this one. But the big like narrative here, if we know our customer and we know who we're trying to serve, is this very specific thing. So it all comes back to really understanding who you're trying to sell this shit to, right? Because if there's, we're trying to sell to a market that these guys probably weren't even thinking about. And so yes, generally similar category of tool, but the difference is how we're presenting the workflow and how we're building it for this very specific client. Personally, I look at competition as like, how can I partner with my competitors? How can I, because we're all these little snowflakes, right? We're all a little bit different, and somebody's going to choose us for one reason or another. And there's a big enough market out there for us all to have some piece of it. So how can I actually partner with the folks that are considered competitors, even like not just the direct competitors, but the lawyer example, who those are the best sources of marketing for you, are the things that are considered to be alternatives, right? Those are referral partners for you. So everybody's going to sort of, like one of those little sorting tools, sort of figure out where they land. But the more you can build kind of an ecosystem around that, I think that's the move, right?
I think the other component, Anthony, is that we forget sometimes that particularly more established competitors have money, and if you do a good job, will be one of the companies that could potentially buy you. And so if you are looking to exit your company, why are you being an asshole to the company that you think may actually buy you at some point in the future? And so, it's a little bit of a dichotomy where you want to try to look and follow them, but at the same time, you're not openly trying to be hostile, I don't think. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I struggle to find a reason to ever be an asshole.
I mean, you do it to me every day, Anthony, so you don't need reasons.
Doing you is not the struggle.
It's maybe not so much a struggle. But yeah, you're exactly right. Conglomerates will eat. So one of three things may happen, right? One, it's going to get out that you have this animosity towards your competitor, and that's not going to play well for you in the sales process. Two, you're going to get acquired by your competitor, and now you have to go work for the group that you were jerks to, or you may also be kind of acquired alongside in a roll-up and have to work with the people, or you're going to get a bad reputation, like that firm that I was talking about that saw us as their major rival. Good luck trying to recruit from us, right? Good luck trying to recruit the team from our team, because you have a bad reputation internally. Nobody's going to go work for you from our group. So there's no good reason to. I mean, healthy competition is great, but there's no good reason to get to that level of
animosity.
I want to punch you in the face. Yeah.
Would you have gotten in the ring?
We never did the ring thing. No, I think he had one in his booth. I think that's what it was. They had one in their booth, and they were going to bring Sean in there and punch him in the face. Like, it was all planned out.
I have an interesting question for both of you. So, I get served a lot of ads for clothing and shoes and whatever. I was a clothing reseller, blah, blah, blah. There's this whole new strategy that has emerged with these companies that make these sort of really shitty, like, shoes or clothing. And they're all the same product, but they launch like 5, 6, 7, 10 different stores that are all branded differently, and they have the same products in them that look identical, and they have this whole story. Each one of them has like this human story behind it, and so you think you're buying, or they put on these, oh, we're a little shop in Toronto, and it was our dream to build this, and now it's shutting down and what have you. So they're actually using competition as a sales tactic.
Yeah,
I find it super fascinating.
Yeah, it's online shelf space, right? That's essentially what that is, and that's people do that off Amazon and on Amazon, and Look, does deception work in sales?
Is it deception?
It's totally deception.
Is it?
Of course it is. Yeah,
That's probably. I mean, I was
100%
going to say
deception.
it's spun up by AI. They did 20.
Yeah, are the stories about the founding of that shoe or why that shoe is being sold true? If it's not, it's a lie. Therefore, it's deception. So, I mean,
But is it so and I agree with you, but I'm like devil's advocate here. I'm like, does it matter? I just find the whole thing fascinating, right? Because it's like using competition as a like a strategy.
well, the fact that you're asking me that question is probably the reason why you and I haven't partnered on anything yet.
I have no interest in doing this, but I know. I think it's kind of fascinating because the other side of it is that
I think it does matter.
The shoes are shit, like they're shitty products.
I think it totally matters. I think integrity. This is so off subject, but maybe it's not. Integrity and the way you way you present yourself, really matters. I think it just really matters. So yeah, I wouldn't want to be involved in anything. I wouldn't want to get anywhere near that.
But
So
let's
say here's the way that I can bring this back together, which is there is a world here where commoditization and competing on price has become such a universal component, particularly in e-commerce and physical products, et cetera, whereby almost everything now is so price driven. How much do you look at the pricing of your competitors when you're launching a product? You know, Anthony, I'm thinking about MC Squares. It was an innovative product. There wasn't anything out there, but you had proxies that you could compare to as far as price. How much did you look at their pricing, and how much are you going to drop your price if a competitor is substantially undercutting you on a similar product?
Yeah. So our claim to fame was reusable sticky notes, and we were compared with you compare one reusable sticky note, one 6-pack was $20 compared to a few dollars for a 50-pack of Post-it notes. And we didn't have any problem selling it $20. In fact, I accidentally raised our price once on Amazon and sales went up, not down. So I think it's just, do you have to be in the ballpark? You have to be in the ballpark for the customer you're going after. And if you're in a commodity play, then price matters very, very deeply. If you're a knockoff sticky note, then yeah, they're going to buy you instead of Post-it if you're less expensive. That's you're the same color, same pack size, everything. If you're 5 cents cheaper, they're going to go with you than Post-it note because you're competing against the brand. So price absolutely matters, but not as much as people think. In fact, most people are undercharging, not overcharging, not charging enough.
It's definitely agree, disagree.
I'm going to come back to the example I was just giving because we got on a tangent about ethics, but really what I was trying to demonstrate was exactly kind of this, is that these companies are flooding the market with all these different brands that sell the same thing, right? And what they're doing is they're normalizing the product, the price, and making it visible all over the place so that somebody starts to think that it's that's what the price is for this product. And that's, it's a good product and I'm seeing it everywhere. It's such an interesting use of quote unquote competition to drive acceptance and uptake of a product. So in the same way, your competitors can be utilized to drive pricing, right? And there are these like games that you learn in business school around how competitors sometimes collude and sometimes compete on pricing and the effects. But I also want to put the perspective of like a services business in here too, right? It's a little bit different when you're not in a commodity type product. And I think it's worth talking about because there are other businesses than just product businesses, right?
I mean, I think it's a great point. So back to sort of our original, question that we're trying to attack here, which is, to what degree do you pay attention to competitors? I think we've answered they're valuable sources of information. You don't want to obsess about competitors. I think that a lot of times, one of the classic mistakes we make as founders is that we behave like we're big company, CEOs. And if you're Coke and Pepsi, where there's two major competitors or three major competitors in a market, you want to be very acutely aware of what those competitors are doing. But by definition, founders are almost always trying to create a new market space. And so with that, again, let's go back to this idea that you're between different industries, you're between different verticals. And I hear you. The most important thing is to focus on the customer and what they want and need and the problem they're solving. But Anthony, you gave us one example of looking at negative reviews for people. Like what other information are you looking at with competitors? Looking at pricing, looking at their negative reviews. What else? What else are you trying to figure out?
Just looking at their ads, looking at their top performing ads. There's tools out there to do it. Looking at what their social media presence is, looking at how well their social media is growing, and try to discern somehow, are they getting any ROI out of the social media? I've seen CEOs look at, go talk to the agencies that their competitors are using, look at their tech stacks. So there's all, and you do that for one of two reasons, either to copy or to pivot or to position against. So I think that matters. And it also matters it also depends on what the kind of business that you're in. If you're in a direct to consumer B2C kind of play, competition really kind of comes down to price, positioning, and
Product.
Price. Well, I mean, product, if you're competing head to head with the product, but it's price, positioning, and kind of like, where do you fall in the value chain? Are you considered premium, or are you considered like the low value or the economical choice in that range? When you're looking at B2B, now you're in sales processes where you have to, are you feature mapping? Are you value matching? Are you saying we deliver better? Is our team stronger? And you have to know your competition in order to have that conversation. I have a buddy that sells cabinets for a living. And he knows every single one of his competitors, why his cabinets are better and why his customers choose his over the others. The depth really matters because of the sales process more than anything else, I think.
Also, he's probably wildly successful and happy just selling cabinets. He's probably way smarter than us.
He's crushing it. He's absolutely crushing it.
Stephanie, give me an example and just play at a hypothetical with me, which is starting a company specifically to compete within a space. And so let's say you have a market leader, and I'll use an example that's kind of well played out. But at this point, early in the days of social media, there were lots of insurgent competitors just because people didn't like Facebook. And so they're trying to be the alternative to Facebook in that case. I remember a couple of people that got some traction there as well. So tell me about, when does it make sense to sort of obsess about the competitor?
Well, look at Microsoft, right? Microsoft is, by their strategy, is to be a fast follower, right? Like Apple will innovate, Microsoft is the fast follower. And that's fine. It's actually a totally legitimate strategy. So they tend to be very focused on what competition is doing, and they let others lead first. Trying to think of a good example where they might, I mean, obviously their OS was the original, the OG, but since then, I would say most of their products have been fast followers. And so they have a very specific focus on their competitors and what they're actually doing. Whereas like an Apple is kind of like, whatever, our whole brand is about innovation and we're going to be the first ones out the door. We're going to try things, even if they're sort of messy, and we're going to launch them and be the first to market. Right.
So just for clarity, folks, You are watching the episode in 2026, not in 2010.
We just talked about Facebook and Microsoft.
Yeah. Apple is no longer call Apple an innovator in the product side. They're innovator in technology.
I think people,
yeah.
if you look at the history, right?
Exactly. Absolutely.
Yeah. And they had a brand, and I think old people like us who may be listening to us can relate, right? I worked for Microsoft. I know this space, call me old, whatever. But I think like the concept of alternatives is super important, because you also don't know, like if you don't know why people are using alternatives, we have a software product and it makes so much sense for our clients, except they will go and use something that doesn't make sense because there was less of an operational barrier for them to use this crappy product as opposed to ours, even though they would prefer to have something like ours. So those are the narratives you need to understand about your market and like what actually is your competitor. I think I'm coming back full circle to sort of where we started, and I probably didn't answer your question.
That's all right.
What question? I'm lost.
What I want to get to is that, so I think that we've brought up a couple of key points, which is obsessing about your competitors as a startup is typically a waste of time. You want to understand what they're doing. There are places where you really want to say, I'm being an insurgent within a market, with a market leader. So in those cases, you want to try to understand those. While pricing is important, not to obsess over that. I want to give you a hypothetical. Let's say that we are starting, we're starting a coffee cup company, Stephanie. We're using cups as the example. How do you map the landscape? It's your job as the founder to understand the market. You need to understand the market and the market dynamics, and you need to be aware of changes and shifts in the market. What does that mean? How does, market is fundamentally other competitors in this space. What is it that you're paying attention to, and what do you pay attention to along the way, not just that early research?
So maybe it may be other people who make products like yours, or it may not be. What if I'm selling to truck drivers, right? And truck drivers are my main market because I know that there's something specific that they need in their coffee cups, right? I'm selling this as something other than an alternative to a coffee cup. I'm selling this as I don't know, whatever it is. I don't.
Amphetamine-laced coffee cups is
totally
really what we're getting into.
So that's not
no dose coffee.
Yeah, so I would be actually looking in the amphetamine market. This is a terrible example, but I would be actually looking at the amphetamine market.
The Mounties are about
not all truck drivers. In fact, most truck drivers.
We have now pissed off our substantial truck driving founder market. That's just it.
You get what I'm saying, right? Like I'm not necessarily looking at coffee because I need to understand what my positioning is and who I'm trying to sell to and for what reason too, right?
I think Stephanie brings up a really, really, really important point, and that is, are you competing on product or on market? Like, your competition probably isn't what you think it is. You're competing on the solution for the problem that your customers are having. And oftentimes the biggest competitor is that your customer doing it themselves or doing nothing.
Yes.
Right?
Or using something they already have. Like the software example, we build registration systems for K-12. But all these school districts were using this horrific piece of software that was built for collecting payments online for field trips and shit like that, right? It was a cash, like it was all about collecting cash. Somehow they sort of rigged it to do some type of registration, and it was not a fit for purpose. It was terrible user experience. It didn't give them what they needed to, but they did it because it was already in place. They had put it in place from their treasurer's office, right? So I went into this market not knowing that that was actually what I was competing with, because it's not a registration tool.
I think it's such a great point. So what you do, the story you just told, Stephanie, is I think one of the underlying principles, which is almost never when you go into a market and you really start to understand, almost never is what you think, like who the competitors are going to be. It almost never is that way, at least in my experience. There's always these dynamics, which is why I think that, I think the three of us, as we're talking about this, we're saying it's important, but obsessing over competitors early in life, there's so many other things that you need to pay attention to other than what your competitors are doing. Secondarily, and I think that this is the piece that you're saying, Anthony, being able to define how you're entering a market, who you're targeting, what segment of that market you're targeting, and how you're competing for that is the fundamental of your startup. And so that's something you should know, and you should be able to understand that. You should be able to say, I am competing for people that have used sticky notes in the past, but are more environmentally conscious.
You're competing for, like, especially in this, you're competing, period, for awareness of the problem you're trying to solve. That's your competition. How do you compete? How do you actually compete for awareness in your space? Whether or not it's another company, another solution, doing nothing, that's what you're competing for.
There's a famous trap question here too, Stephanie, which is when you're going and raising money, if a VC or an investor asks you who your competitors are, and you say, I don't have any competitors.
Why would you say that?
That's a trap question, meaning that you do have competitors. You just need to know who they are and be able to articulate what we just said, right?
I will also say that focusing on your competitors can lock you into like an obsession around what they're doing. And I think that hampers innovation. I think that you are going to prevent yourself from being able to see what the opportunity really is out there because you're focusing so much on what they're doing and assuming that they have already investigated the angle that you're thinking about. And because they're not pursuing it, it's not a good angle. So you have to have conviction around what you're actually trying to solve for. And your competition and what they're doing is just sort of, it's in some ways going to support your narrative, right?
Right before we go to the speed round, I'm just going to summarize what I think I heard you guys say, which is obsessing about the customer, the problems they have, the pain points they have is the first step. Understanding how you're going to solve them, how you're going to be, which group of those people you're targeting is the next step. And then looking around and saying who else is competing for attention and awareness within that same general area. I think that's the right step. I think that it's never a good idea for early stage startups to, wildly obsess around startups. All right. Are you guys ready for the speed round? It's a hypothetical question. It wasn't yes or no, really, because I was about to hit the button anyway. So I'll start with you, Anthony. So we'll go Anthony and Stephanie. Speed round. Pick one: competitor analysis or customer interviews.
Customer interviews.
Customer interviews. 100%.
Your strongest competitor is customer does nothing.
Yes.
True or false?
True.
True, Stephanie?
Yes.
Okay. A rival.
No decision is a decision.
Exactly. A rival cuts pricing by 50%. Match them or hold your pricing?
It depends.
I'm going to outlaw that answer on speed round. Stephanie?
Hold your pricing and make sure that you've got your positioning and narrative strong.
Tracking your closest competitors weekly, is that sharp intel or is that just vanity work?
Vanity work.
It's fear. It's fear and insecurity. Nobody likes that.
Nobody likes that. Very good conversation. Deep dive resources. Blue Ocean Strategy, classic book by W. Chan Kim and Renee Malborne. Sorry for the bad name. And then obviously Awesome by April Dunford. Good stuff, Anthony and Stephanie. Appreciate you guys on a Thursday morning. Just spry talking about competitors, calling, saying good thing we're not assholes. Anthony, good job.
Yeah, we're not, and we obviously don't do any competitive research here on the How to Founder podcast.
We have no competitors.
It's so refreshing.
I will say that we compete between the dad joke audience and the founder audience. We're right in between there. Multiple verticals.
That's very true.
Multiple verticals.
Yeah, our competitors is the All In podcast, and we're catching up. Slowly but surely, we're catching up.
Exactly. Yeah, very, very slowly in that case. Anthony, get us out of here.
Yeah, I love that. I love this conversation. Thank you all so much for listening. Please be sure to visit us at howtofounder.com, where you can connect with us on LinkedIn and subscribe to our YouTube, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify channels. I'm going to guess you're probably on one of those right now. So if you are, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. And if you liked Chris, make sure you leave that 5-star review for us. Those really do help us out. It's the only reason why we're doing that is because we're so insecure. We need that positive reinforcement.
We need the validation.
Really,
We're middle-aged white men who need validation constantly.
Yeah, that's really
or something to that effect. Yes. All right. Thanks, everybody. We'll talk to you later. Bye.
It's almost as if you have no business training at all.